In this case, Mr. Smith or his side had to show, in terms of arguing self-defense, a real and specific threat that he perceived when he chose to draw his weapon and fire.
Yes, he was trying, in this case, the guidelines for felon in possession of a firearm also take into account whether that firearm was used in another violent crime. And in this case, the probation agent, in writing the report, found, and the government agreed with, that it was used in an attempted murder, the shooting of Ms. Chidress. The defense argued that that cross-reference, as we referred to, should not apply because they contend Mr. Smith was acting in self-defense, that he had information that those other individuals had a gun, and that's why he drew that gun and fired. The government was able to prove to Judge Anderson in the court that that was not the case. There was no true evidence in the record from anyone, either presented by Mr. Smith and his defense or by any of the other witnesses, that there was actual guns seen by these other individuals. That while a witness may have told Mr. Smith that those persons had guns, there was no evidence in the record that Mr. Smith stated they had guns and fired guns upon him. The law in the Fourth Circuit for justification, it's not self-defense, but it's called a justification defense. There's 4 different things that you have to prove, and one of those is that you have a real, credible, imminent, present harm to yourself, and that you didn't recklessly put yourself in that situation. And the judge found that the defense was not able to prove those 4 things to go forward with a self-defense. So that therefore the court found that the cross-reference to murder first degree applied, attempted murder first degree applied, and that was the thing that got Mr. Smith to the maximum 10-year sentence in this case. And the judge also ruled in the alternative that had he agreed with the defense and not applied that cross-reference, he still would have found the maximum 120-month sentence or 10-year sentence to be the appropriate sentence based on the other things in the record as outlined by us.
You heard the statements from Mrs. Smith, from Michael's mother, about what kind of environment he grew up in, and you countered with commentaries that were made during these phone calls recorded from the Alvin Glenn Detention Center. What do you think those phone calls actually show?
I'm not going to speak on those phone calls outside of what I said in the courtroom to the court. I'm going to let that stand. I'm not going to address them separately. Those phone calls were Mr. Smith's words in the days after the shooting. It showed his attitude toward this whole event at that time.
Can you tell us what he said in those phone calls, please?
I said that in the courtroom. I'm not going to repeat it again today right here in front of the cameras because I don't want to speak differently than I did in the court and go off my memory. So I would rely upon the words spoken in the court as I went through the documents actually there in court.
Today was a lot of technicalities and intricacies of the guidelines, and yet at the heart of this, you're representing a young girl whose life is forever altered by a split second. Does that drive you in this? How does that impact you when you're walking through all these legalities and nuts and bolts of things?
Actually, I represent the United States government. I don't represent victims or defendants. I represent the United States government to enforce the laws on our books. Ms. Chidress, unfortunately, was victimized that night. And she, as Mr. McCullough and Mr. Carpenter said, is an aspiring young lady. And it was an honor for me to be able to speak with her and meet her and witness the remarkable way in which she's carried herself from this shooting. She's amazing. But I don't represent Ms. Chidress, and I don't represent defendants. I represent the United States government.
What message would you like this 10-year sentence to send to anyone, be it at 5 Points or anywhere else that thinks they're going to carry around a gun and just shoot into a crowd and not face any consequences? What message would you like that to convey?
The message that it relays is that the federal government does not tolerate felons arming themselves with firearms. We have sent that message time and time again, and we will continue to send that message. Felons with guns are not going to escape federal prosecution. If you're a felon and you arm yourself with a firearm, there's a good chance you will end up in federal court for being a felon in possession.
One of the things that the defense was trying to claim was that there was no malice shown. Do you want to say anything more about that, clearly, the evidence that you guys have? Because you were pretty hammered on that pretty much, that clearly he did have intent.
As we said in the courtroom, the evidence showed that Mr. Smith armed himself with a firearm, a stolen firearm, before he even went to 5 Points, just in case he had a, quote, beef with some other individual. And you all saw the video that we played in there, the clip showing him move that firearm from the left-hand side of his body over to his right-hand side pocket where he ultimately drew it from. So I think those speak to his malice.
If you could go back to the judge or the moment when in the previous sentencing the judge said, I'm going to take a chance on you. and you're going to make me look bad if he does anything. If you could go back to that moment, what would you do or say? I mean,
well, that's not a moment that I was there. That's a moment in state court that you're quoting, a transcript from the state court prosecution. I was not a part of that. That was several years ago when Mr. Smith was prosecuted on the state level, so I can't really address that.
It resonated, though, to know that a judge was taking a chance on him. Should this guy have been out on the street?
They took 2 chances on him.
Should they have?
That's up to them to decide. I'm not a judge. Judges look at the totality of the circumstances, and they take chances on individuals, and you can take chances until you're proven wrong.